Hello, and welcome to the Magic of Calvin and Hobbes, a fan celebration. My name is Ryan, and I am a self-proclaimed Calvin and Hobbes superfan and expert.
And my name is also Ryan, although most people call me Indy.
Welcome to episode 30 of the Magic of Calvin and Hobbes. I, for one, cannot believe that we are on episode 30. Can you believe that, Indy?
No, that seems kind of crazy. Like it practically feels like we just started. So, man, I don't know.
Yeah, we should not be three-quarters of the way done, but
No, it's
here we
like the
are.
summer days in Calvin and Hobbes. Like,
Hey, it's 10 episodes later than it was 10 episodes ago.
oh no, oh no, run.
Yeah, but so here we are, episode 30. This episode, we're talking about the best club in the cosmos, Get Rid of Slimy Girls, or G.R.O.S.S. And before we get into that, let's just go through our usual disclaimers. So, we're not affiliated with Bill Watterson, we're not affiliated with his syndicate. We don't have any rights to the strips, so we can't show them on our YouTube channel or anywhere else. But we will write a blog post that gives you all of the comics we talk about, the dates they were published, so you can look them up on gocomics.com if you have a subscription, and we will give you the books and page numbers so you can look them up in the books if you have those. So before we get into the episode, we have an email. This is from Grant in North Carolina. And Grant says he has a question for our podcast. And he asks, do we think that Susie believes that Mr. Bunn is alive like Calvin believes Hobbes is alive? When we see Susie's imagination from Calvin's perspective, he might not see Mr. Bunn is alive, but we never see it through Susie's eyes. So I went ahead and responded, but I'm curious what you think. So I said, here's my opinion. It's not canon, it's not fact, but I don't think Susie sees Mr. Bunn the same way Calvin sees Hobbes, because to Calvin, Hobbes is completely real, and from his perspective, there's no pretending involved. He's not imagining it's Hobbes is Hobbes. Susie says she doesn't understand why Calvin won't play pretend with Mr. Bunn, suggesting that she sees Mr. Bunn as pretend. But I don't know. And so I asked what he thinks, and he said that he agrees probably Susie sees Mr. Bunn as pretend, but it's a fun idea to think about. Maybe she sees him the way Calvin sees Hobbes.
Yeah, it's funny. I would agree with what you said and what it sounds like Grant thinks too. And funnily enough, I was thinking of the same reference, like Susie saying
Hmm.
that to Kevin, why you're just mean. Why won't you play pretend with Mr. Bunn, if you will, with I think she says, you're dumb old tiger, which usually she kind of likes Hobbs, but
Yeah, but she's mad at the moment, so he's
yeah.
a dumb old tiger right now.
Yeah, so yeah, I kind of don't think so either. Like to me, it seems like yeah, she thinks, well, these are stuffed animals, they're fun to play pretend with, but she doesn't see Mr. Munn the same way she does Hobbs. Now, interestingly, she also seems to like play along with Calvin to a certain extent because she does speak to Hobbes and she even
Yeah,
writes to him. So in the birthday party arc, she invites Hobbes to the
right.
birthday party and oh, you can bring that dumb kid you hang around with if you must.
Yeah. Yeah, and but I kind of get the sense that Susie thinks that Calvin is also pretending. I
Hmm.
don't think she realizes that to Calvin, Hobbes is a real being. I think she sees Hobbes as a stuffed animal and figures Calvin probably does too, but that he pretends Hobbes is real the same way she pretends Mr. Bunn is real and doesn't realize no, no, for Calvin, Hobbes is actually a living tiger.
Right. Which is kind of charming too and makes it funnier in certain ways because and I've talked before about like imagining things from other characters' perspectives, such as Susie. And Susie's got to be thinking like, well, of course she knows like I can take the water balloon from Hobbs. Like what
Yeah.
what is he doing? Or then the genuine confusion, like I don't know what's weirder that you're fighting a stuffed animal or that you seem to be losing. And so like
I'm not losing. He cheats when he fights.
yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's kind of cute in a certain way. And so, yeah, Susie, I think, yeah, I would agree. Like, she thinks, well, yeah, of course, stuffed animals you talk to, you have tea parties with them. I mean, Mr. Bunn and Hobbs do play together at least once when Hobbs goes missing and Susie finds him and have the tea party. So, yeah, I think it's a
Right.
fun thing to think about, though, because it's like, from Susie's perspective, well, I mean, boy, I like to pretend just like Calvin, but boy, he really pretends. He sticks with it. Like,
Yeah, he's committed to the bit.
yeah, I was gonna say it was almost. I doubt they think in these terms, but if it was like acting or something, it's like, man, he really commits to the part, or he stays in
Yeah,
character the whole time. So,
yeah. So there you have it, Grant. That's what we think, and it sounds like you probably agree. But if anyone else has a different perspective, let us know. And thanks for the email, Grant. We always appreciate hearing from listeners.
yeah, definitely keep listening, Grant. We're glad to have you.
One more thing before we dive in. We have mentioned in a few other episodes that we're hoping to put together a trivia episode where we try to stump each other with different questions. And we'll come up with some questions for each other, I'm sure, but we would also love for you, the listeners, to participate. So anyone who would like to can submit questions to us at magiccnh@proton.me and either mark the subject line questions for Ryan if you want me to answer them, or questions for Indy if you want Indy to answer them. And please submit those by August 31st.
That's right. And in fact, we've already received some questions submitted by listeners. So we would love to have more. And thank you to those who have already submitted. And again, the person who they're for has not read them. So the other person will always be the one to do that. So you don't have to worry that we're like, oh, haha, we secretly know them ahead. So that would be kind of silly anyway, because that also spoils the fun for us if we do that. So we have had an interest in not doing that anyway. But yeah, in case anyone was worried
Yeah.
about that. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you'll just have to trust us. We could do it and you'd never know the difference, but what would be the fun in that?
Yeah, why would we? I mean, yeah, it's fun to be able to test ourselves and see if we can get the answers. So yeah, and thank you again. I might have said this already, but yeah, thank you to those who have already submitted, and everyone else, feel free to submit your own.
Yeah. So August 31st again, just so we have time to put something together. So, with that said, let's jump in. So, Gross. This is Calvin and Hobbes's super secret club, and we'll maybe talk about just how secret it is or is not later and how we got there. But the name of the club is Get Rid of Slimy Girls, abbreviated G.R.O.S.S. or Gross. And I'll just right from the outset say I love the use of the final letter of girls as part of the acronym to make it work.
Exactly, and that does make it redundant, but otherwise it doesn't spell anything. So
Yeah. Are girls slimy? Well,
yeah,
yeah, of
of
course,
course they are.
obviously.
Why wouldn't there be? Yeah, and I don't know if I'm just sort of making this up, but I kind of feel like that whole, well, you could use the last letter instead thing was maybe something I did as a kid too. So that always felt very kind of true to life. It's like, well, all right, I know it should have been every first letter, but whatever, the last letter's fine. So
Yeah. Well, I've always kind of joked in my head about doing that, at least. I don't think I've ever done it for real, but like if someone asks, is your name Ryan or Brian? I have in my head wanted to say Ryan with an R, like in elevator.
I mean, that'll work. It'll take people a second, but man, I can just say I'm sure you had the same experience. Like the horrors of being called Brian, like that was
I
actually
know.
that was a big pet peeve of mine as a kid because people made that mistake all the time.
Yeah, and I don't mind if they ask, is it Ryan or Brian? Because then I can clarify. But yeah, when they just say, "Oh, hi, Brian, nice to meet you," I'm like, "No, it's not Brian, it's Ryan."
Exactly. Yeah, especially when I was a
Yeah,
kid, I hated that. And in fact, there's one time that I distinctly remember, and this was when I was maybe four-ish, so a little kid. And I was actually at a doctor's appointment, and there was someone other than my normal doctor was there too. It was like someone in training or another doctor or nurse or something. But so my doctor's like, "Oh, I'd like to introduce you to Ryan." And the person goes, "Oh, nice to meet you, Brian." And I said, "My name's not Brian, it's Ryan." And so she said, "Oh, excuse me. Nice to meet you, Ryan." So I said, "Nice to meet you." And so, unbeknownst to me, my mother was actually staring daggers at me at this point, like obviously assuming I was going to be like, "My name's not Ryan, it's Ryan." But I actually remember this. I remember thinking, okay, clearly she's not doing that on purpose because I don't know if I went through all
yeah,
these steps of logic, but it's like the likelihood of first saying Brian instead of Ryan, which is weird, and then saying Ryan instead of Ryan, which I'm like, okay, so she's she's not doing that part on purpose, so just okay. But yeah, my mom was actually, yeah, my mom was extremely worried that we were gonna have some big like unfortunate incident.
I was a little worried that's where the story was going. I'm glad it
I
didn't.
know, yeah, me too. Like I would have felt bad for that person if young me
Yeah,
had unwittingly made fun of her speech impediment or whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I always hated being called Brian, especially like if people assumed, like you said.
yeah. Now, nothing against the name Brian. If your name is Brian, no shade. It's just not my name, you
Right.
know? So,
Actually, I wonder, like, so any Brians out there who listen, did you have a similar experience in reverse where like my name's not Ryan, it's Brian. So did that happen too, or was it just us poor
yeah,
Ryans who had to suffer?
yeah. Who bears the worst burden? We'll have to find this out. All this and more on Calvin's Show and Tell.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I don't think it ever occurred to me to wonder that before. Man, how self-centered have I been all these years? Gosh, I feel terrible
Never even
now.
thinking about the poor Bryans. Yeah, what
Yeah,
is wrong with
maybe
us?
they
Yeah,
suffered as much or more as we did.
it's it's possible. Yeah. Well, that was a fun digression, but now
No
let's
way.
talk about gross.
That's right. Gross. Get rid of slimy girls.
Yes. So before we really get into it, because we have now established sort of a tradition, Indy, how many gross strips or stories would you guess there are?
Okay, so as usual, I'm thinking this is probably a case where it feels like more than it is. So my initial thought was higher than this number, but I'm going to end up guessing, I think 14.
Are you saying 14 stories or 14 strips?
Oh, well, I guess stories and or references. So like I know there's at least
Okay, so
one.
14 cases where gross comes up.
Right. So for instance, I would count like in my head, like I think in one of the books there's just a picture where it's like we see Calvin and Hobbes in the treehouse and there's a sign and it says gross and it has like a skull and crossbones. So I would count something like that. But
Okay. All right. So, by my count, I'm going to break it down in a couple of different ways. So, it's a little tricky to count because there are some things that maybe could be gross but aren't explicitly identified as gross. We'll talk about that more later.
okay.
But ones that actually identify gross being part of the strip or story, there are, let me see, one, two, three, four, five story arcs plus another three standalone strips that actually involve gross. Now, some of the story arcs aren't entirely about gross, and again, we'll talk about how that breakdown works a little bit later.
Sure.
So again, it depends on you count how you count it. If you count every strip in the arc as part of gross because the story involves it, even though not every strip does, then there are 84 total strips.
Okay.
If you cut out the ones that don't involve gross, by my count, it's 61, and then plus a few pictures that you mentioned. So
Oh,
ultimately, if you're counting just things that are gross, there are 8 cases that ran in newspapers, but some of them are quite long stories.
all right.
So 14 is a bit high if that's how you're counting it. It's very low if you're counting every individual strip.
Okay. Wow, that's interesting. All right, so I guess I could be wrong in two different ways with this guess. So that's
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
you were wrong both directions
Oh
this time.
man, like
Congratulations.
and I did so well in our last episode guessing too. So man, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, but I mean, this one's really hard to count because, like I say, there's also some ones that we'll talk about in a minute that they feel like it involves gross, but it doesn't actually say it. So
Yeah,
it's real hard to arrive at a number.
yeah, I think that's fair. And even I know we'll talk about this later. There's a very early like proto gross strip, which before the formation of gross, but it's clearly the same kind of thing. Like I'm not saying I was counting that and what I was guessing, but I do know what you mean. And so like I said, it whatever the number is, it feels like it could be more than the official number because it's so prominent in the strip.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, so with the arcs, there are actually quite a few strips involving it because some of the arcs ran several weeks.
Hmm.
And so, that makes it that contributes to it feeling so prominent. So, let's talk about some of the basics of Gross, what it is, and then we'll get to the comics where we actually learn about it. So, first of all, it's a club, and basically its entire purpose is first to exclude Susie Durkins, and second, to bug Susie Durkins.
Yeah, and I mean, in theory, its purpose is to get rid of slimy girls in general, but it is funny how much Susie is called out specifically. And in fact, I wasn't really thinking of this, but if you look at when it's first formed, it's like, I know, we can call it Get Rid of Slimy Girls. That way, Susie Durkins can't join. So it's like, yes,
Exactly, like,
yeah, the whole point of the club like, yeah, we exclude all girls, but it's specifically to make sure that Susie in particular cannot join.
yeah, which that will come up again later, actually, but uh, there may be some difference of opinion as to whether or not that should be part of the club.
That's true. Funnily enough, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the point is to get rid of all slimy girls, but I cannot think of a single instance where gross activity targets anyone other than Susie. So
That's
it's
true.
it's pretty much her. Now,
So she's the
the only
avatar of slimy girlness everywhere.
exactly, yeah, she or the scapegoat maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um So the only members of the club, of course, are Calvin and Hobbes, and because they're the only members, they fulfill several roles. So Calvin is the dictator for life, or supreme dictator for life, or briefly king and tyrant, while Hobbes is president and first tiger. And there's some dispute about who outranks who in that pecking order, but we'll see more about that. Calvin is also the top field scout and the chief strategist, and Hobbes is also the club's secretary and stenographer, so he keeps the minutes and also logs any court actions that may happen. More hilarity on that later.
yeah. I actually like how much they follow what I guess is either really or sort of a takeoff of what Robert's Rules of Order, I believe, is the official thing.
Yeah,
So
parliamentary procedure and all that.
yeah, so they're
Yeah,
very official about all this.
sort of. Yeah,
Well, at least they make an attempt at it. So like they're more official than I
right.
would have been as a kid with any clubs I was in. So
Oh, for sure. And then they also play other roles as a given mission may require, such as cartographer or code expert. So basically, they fill whatever role needs to be filled.
that's right. And that's one way you can tell how great of a club it is because they have so many officers and roles.
Yes, there are many ways you can tell, but that is one way that
That
we
is
know
one of the
that it's a
many
great
ways,
club.
yes.
Now, meetings usually occur in the clubhouse, which is situated in a tree and accessed by a rope ladder, although they may be held elsewhere if needed, as we will see in a couple of occasions.
Yeah, especially in an emergency.
Yes. Now, during meetings, they usually wear newspaper hats, although that's only what they are to the untrained eye. What are they really?
I believe they refer to them as fancy chapeaus, or maybe the official chapeau.
Well, yes, both terms are used in different instances. So yeah, either the official chapeau or a fancy chapeau is suitable.
Right. And I think fancy comes in particular when they're doing one of the verses extolling how great they are. Like I think we did this in a previous episode, but like in his fancy
Yeah,
chapeau, he's a leader with taste. May his something be heeded
yeah,
and his rules be embraced, or something like that.
yeah, yeah. So we did that in episode 18 on songs and poems, and yeah, so Calvin and Hobbes are extolling how great they are, and they've composed this whole poem about. Yeah, in his fancy chapeau, he's a leader with taste and all that, and it's great. So
Yeah.
if you want to hear that in its entirety, see episode 18.
Which was also a great episode for lots of other reasons too. So yeah, I mean, all of our
Yeah, that
episodes
was
are amazing, of course, but we especially had fun with that one.
yeah, we've discovered that we have lots of enemies because everyone hates us because of how great we are, and it's quite a burden to bear. So, uh,
Yes, naturally, of course. Yeah, everyone hates us because of how great we are. Yeah. Or or it starts like everyone loves us because we're so great, and like then it's like, well, actually,
yeah, they can't stand how brilliant we are. That's what it
yeah.
really is.
Then
So,
there's
yeah, they're
also
jealous.
when you're this great, people often mistake candor for bragging. That's another fun one. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. In addition to the chant extolling how great they are, there's a club anthem that we also did in episode 18, our various renditions of it. And Calvin sings the soprano part, although eventually he won't once his voice changes,
That's just
obviously.
until my voice changes, which, as I mentioned before, I love the idea that he imagines himself as like a teenager or an adult still being supreme dictator for life of the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah.
And although the chapeau is worn during meetings, importantly, it's not usually worn during missions. So that's part of what can make it hard to know whether what we're seeing is official gross business or just, you know, bugging Susie. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But let's talk about the clubhouse. So Calvin has a treehouse somewhere in his backyard, and as we said, he gets into it by climbing a rope ladder, but Hobbs doesn't need the ladder. Now, as an aside, tigers are natural tree climbers, but what do they usually have with them?
So I think what they usually have with them are grappling hooks, ropes, and utility belts.
Right. So they're basically Batman.
Yes,
And that,
which that's pretty cool. So as great as tigers are, I mean, Batman is also right up there.
yeah. So maybe that's why Calvin also likes Batman, as we talked about a couple episodes ago.
Yeah,
So importantly, because Hobbs can get into the tree but Calvin can't, Hobbs got to make up the password. Again, see episode 18 for the full rendition of the verses that we have, because we don't have all of them. He didn't write all of them. But what we know is that the password is at least 8 verses long, possibly more, and kind of like the opening chant for gross meetings, each verse in the password in some way extols the virtues of tigers. So tigers are nimble and light on their toes, things like that.
my respect for tigers continually grows.
Yes, exactly. And we're explicitly given verses 1, 2, 6, and 7, and then whatever the last verse is. Could be verse 8, or there might be other verses in between. We just know that after Calvin says that verse, Hobbes actually lowers the rope ladder. Of course, it's possible that Hobbes adds more verses later, but as of
That's
that
true.
strip, it's the last verse.
And we know that he doesn't always let Calvin up into the treehouse unless he gives the password because, and I quote, you may be some other kid in disguise.
I mean, I think it's a worthwhile precaution to take. You can't be too careful, especially with the business of gross. So,
I think so too, especially if one of Hobbs's roles is like security officer or something. So he may be
yeah,
required by the gross bylaws to do this.
that's true. He's not explicitly identified but he might be Chief Security Officer Hobbs. So,
It
yeah,
wouldn't be
good point.
surprising.
Now, I don't know how much of this is security, but apparently there's also a dance that goes with the password that Calvin may or may not do every time. So, uh,
That's
I mean,
true.
I guess it adds security because maybe you've stolen the password, but if you don't know the dance, then we can still identify you as an imposter. So,
That's right. What it also means if foreign agents like put an audio bug on you, that might get them the password, but if there's no video capabilities, they wouldn't have the dance. So yeah, it's like two-factor authentication, but for treehouse rope ladders.
yeah, this is how you did it back before, cell phones and stuff. You had to come up with
Yeah.
a different two factors. So,
I think this probably
and
inspired that whole technology, actually.
that's a good point. So, the next time you are annoyed or grateful for your two factor authentication, you know who to thank. So,
Yeah. One more reason why Calvin and Hobbes are so great and everyone loves them and or is jealous of them.
exactly. Now, this whole idea of Hobbes being able to get into the treehouse and then lower the rope ladder is one of my favorite references to the issue of Hobbes's reality, where Bill Watterson has said that he never resolved that issue and he even went out of his way not to, as far as, is Hobbes real? Is he in Calvin's imagination? Whatever. Is this just Calvin's perception of reality? In this case, I can come up with an explanation for how stuffed Hobbes gets in the treehouse without the ladder, because Calvin could just throw him up there, although suggesting that to Hobbes would be absolutely insulting. But
That's right.
regardless,
He thinks
it,
you threw me in the air? I've never been so insulted in my life.
yeah. But how Hobbs manages to lower the rope ladder once he's up there is a much more difficult question to answer. And it does seem like the rope ladder is not always just already lowered, because at least one time Susie walks by and the rope ladder is not down. And Calvin is yelling up at him, "I'm gonna make you into a rug, you hear me? A rug." So,
That's true. And on at least one occasion, he partially lowers it, but then kind of dangles it just out of reach. So
yeah. Yeah, so how that it works exactly is left to your imagination. See episode 28. But a couple other things that I want to bring up with the password. Here's a fun fact. So I just mentioned that we are given five of the at least eight verses explicitly, and then a few are omitted. The verses that we are given, of those, only the last verse is actually tied to a strip that explicitly involves Gross. The others we could construe to be part of Gross, and that certainly fits, but they don't mention Gross. And not only that, but in the chronology of Calvin and Hobbes, all of them except that last verse were written before the first Gross story arc. So in a sense,
hmm,
Gross didn't exist when we were given verses 1, 2, 6, and 7. It so this is comes back to what we've talked about many times before, that you can read Calvin and Hobbes non-linearly, right? Like those could still be gross, and we just haven't been introduced to gross yet in the actual chronology of the strip. But
that's true.
Watterson actually hadn't come up with the idea of get rid of slimy girls for most of the password verses that he wrote. I find that very interesting.
It is. And I guess it could be there was always a password to get up into the treehouse. And then once that became the official headquarters for Gross, then it just kind of was also the password to get into Gross, just because, that's the password to get in the meeting house. So that would also be a way to explain it, where it's like, well, we can't let just anybody up into the treehouse. Certainly not Susie, and certainly not some other kid in disguise pretending to be Calvin. So you may have always needed a password, whether or not you were having Gross meetings there.
That's true. Now, I will say, in, I believe, every strip where Calvin recites any verse of the password, he is wearing his fancy chapeau, which doesn't necessarily
That's
mean that
true.
it's gross, but it's a good indicator because it's,
Yeah, that does
that's
lend
part of the
credence to that
official.
idea.
Yeah. So, you could read it either way. Obviously, there's not a right answer, but listeners, what do you think? Was that always the gross password, or was it just converted to the gross password once that became an official club? So, with that said, let's now dive into some of the Gross strips and stories. So, our first introduction to Gross comes in a story arc from May of 1989, which is all the way up in Revenge of the Babysat. So, that's the fifth of the Calvin and Hobbes collections published. It took quite a while before we actually got introduced to what would become such an iconic part of the strip.
Yeah, that kind of surprises me when I think about it too, because like you said, it sounds like, oh, of course, gross is synonymous with Calvin and Hobbes, but yeah, really, it was only in the second half of the strip's run.
Yeah. And I mean, again, you could. I think part of it is that it's easy to read those password strips as him
Hmm.
getting into the Gross Clubhouse retroactively. So it feels like it started before that. But
That's
yeah,
true. And bugging and excluding Susie has always been sort of Calvin's shtick, so that's probably another
yeah. In
reason too.
fact, you mentioned an early instance of that. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what that was before we get into actual grossness?
Right. And so this is a very early strip, I think in the first book, and we have Calvin up in the treehouse, I believe wearing one of the chapeaus actually, and then
Mm-hmm.
we see Susie down below and he says, "Oh, you can't come up here, Susie, no girls allowed." And I believe Susie replies, "What in the world makes you think I'd want to sit in a stupid tree anyway?" And then so she
Yeah.
leaves, and Calvin says, "Well, leave it to a girl to take all the fun out of sex discrimination."
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think that's within the first couple weeks of the strip. So, even though it's not identified as the club, he's already doing it. And that's, again,
Yeah,
what makes it kind of hard to count which ones are gross strips and which ones aren't.
right. That's pretty much gross in all but names. So,
Yeah, exactly. So, when we get to the story arc that actually introduces us to the club, Calvin tells Hobbs that he's starting a club and that Hobbs can be in it, and Hobbs is excited about that. And Calvin doesn't know yet what the club is going to be, and we'll talk about that in a second, but he only knows that it's going to be secret. They'll have secret code names and secret handshakes and a secret clubhouse. And why does he want it to be so secret?
It's because people pay more attention to you when they think you're up to something.
Yeah, so does he really want it to be secret? I don't know. That's a little paradoxical, but uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's still secret because like he wants them to know he's up to something, just not knowing what specifically.
Yeah, so maybe like the existence of the club is not a secret, but whatever they're actually doing, all the details, those are the secrets. So, oh, you're
It's like the CIA. We all know the CIA exists.
that's true, but we don't really know what they get
Yeah,
up to, or at least I don't. Listeners, if you do, well, maybe don't tell us either. That might be a
probably
bad
don't
idea,
tell us.
but yeah, it's
Yeah,
like, well, you see, what happened was these podcast hosts said that I should tell them, so really I shouldn't be court-martialed or whatever.
and that is how I find myself in Guantanamo Bay. Yeah,
Yes.
so don't do
Man,
that.
funny story. Awesome podcast, but bad advice they gave me.
Yeah. So, of course, the first thing they need to come up with is a name for their club, and they float a few ideas. So, what are some of the ideas that they float?
So I believe the first one submitted by Hobbs is the Hobbs Fan Club.
Yes, so the Hobbs Fan Club. What kind of stupid idea is that? That's what a dumb name for a club. And what does
Yeah.
Calvin propose as a counter?
All right. So instead, it should be something like the Sinister Icy Black Hand of Death Club.
I like my idea better.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
it's hard. I can see the merits in both of those suggestions.
yeah. I mean, the second one doesn't roll off the tongue, but it's definitely got that ominous feel to it. So,
That's true. That does
yeah,
have more of the secrecy vibe that Calvin was going for.
right. Now, listeners, if you have been listening to the podcast for a long time, you may also recognize that from our very first not even episode, our little teaser that we did before we launched the first episode, where we floated some names for this podcast, such as the Ryan and Indy Show, or
Did I just say the Sinister Icy Black Hand of Death show?
I think so,
Yeah, I think
or
that's what
possibly
I said.
Sinister Icy Black Hand of Death podcast. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
right, so that was fun. Yeah, a certain pair of amazing podcast hosts have also done this bit. But yeah, so obviously that was a parody to this, and also the that's called a teaser, by the way. That was also a parody, which I'm sure most of our listeners knew either at the time or probably at least by now.
right. Yeah, that was fun. We
It
enjoyed
was.
doing that.
So yeah, but if you haven't heard this, yes, episode 0, you can relive the beginning of the magic.
Ah, the glory days. We were so young and inexperienced back then.
We
We
thought
thought
those
we
days
knew
would last
everything.
forever, which we did kind of say, sort of, at the beginning of this episode. So,
Yeah. Now, ultimately, we land on the name Gross, get rid of slimy girls, specifically so that Susie can't join. Now, that does bring up the question, is Susie slimy?
all girls are slimy.
Obviously. Yeah, so when Susie comes up and Calvin mentions the name to her, she says, "Girls aren't slimy," and Calvin just ignores her and says, "Don't get gunk on me. I took a bath last Saturday and I'm all clean."
Yeah, which always made me wonder exactly which day this is supposed to take place on, because that does change the dynamic a bit. Now, since he says last Saturday, that makes me think it's not very close to Saturday too. So,
Right, it sounds like we're maybe even at least one Saturday removed from that, possibly, so,
right,
or
which
close to.
yeah, which it's hard to imagine Calvin's parents letting him get away with this, but I can easily believe Calvin would see little need of taking a bath if he weren't made to. So I don't know.
He
Well,
certainly doesn't like them
no,
most of the time.
most of the time.
Uh,
Sometimes he has fun with it, but I mean
yeah.
that's kind of that's true to life with kids too. It's like you don't really want to, but when you're in, you've got like toys and stuff, and well, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, once you're in, it's great. It's getting there that's the problem. But
Yeah.
yeah. So now that they've landed on a name for the club and a purpose, they elect officers. And Indy, would you like to describe how that goes?
Yeah, so I believe the way it goes is Hobbes suggested, or no, Calvin says something and then Hobbes tops it. And it's like, well, no, that's what I want to be. So it's like, all right, I get to be
Yeah,
president. All right, well, then I'll be I forget what he says. Like, no, no, that's what I want to be. You can be president.
yeah. So it starts out with we need to elect officers, and Hobbes immediately says, "I get to be president. I get to be president." And Calvin says, "No, this is my club, so I get to be president." And Hobbes says, "Fine, then I get to be king and tyrant."
That's right.
No, that's what I want to be. You can be president, which I guess eventually transforms into dictator for life. I guess that's better than king and tyrant, but
I
yeah,
mean, it may be six of one, half a dozen of the other.
right. Yeah, maybe dictator for life just sounds better,
Yeah. And it also
but
kind of is reminiscent of another Treehouse strip, which again, I think probably predates Gross officially, but yeah, we have Calvin up in the treehouse wearing a crown at this point rather than a fancy
mhm.
chapeau, but saying like, "Oh, ha ha ha, I alone shall decide the good. My lunatic whims are laws," for the subject. So,
And then mom comes up and says, like, time for bed, Calvin, or something, and carts him off under her arm. And he's like, being a parent must be nice.
right,
So
which is so that's
I
how
guess,
Calvin views his parents as tyrants and dictators with lunatic whims. Yeah,
which is fitting with the how stupendous man stuff goes. A
that's right.
local household is in the iron grip of terror of mom lady and whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah, and
Now,
babysitter girl threatens to establish a totalitarian system of rule.
exactly. Yeah. So now that they have their club and at least some of their officers, they need a place to meet. And Calvin initially decides that they can set up a card table in the garage, apparently thinking that this will be for all their club meetings. I think it's kind of strange that they didn't think to use the treehouse, which actually maybe kind of makes me think they didn't have the treehouse yet
Hmm.
as an option. And which would again lend credence to the idea that the strips that predate Gross chronologically, but that are in the treehouse, maybe they got the treehouse after Gross was formed, and then they could use it as their meeting place.
It's possible, or maybe it was just kind of a weird incident, like, oh, that never occurred to me. So if you get in your mind, well, where can we set up a card table? I don't know. How about the garage? And then, later you kind of slap
Yeah,
your forehead. Why didn't I just use the treehouse the whole time? So
yeah, that is also a very plausible way to read it. So either way could work, but using the garage is a problem because the car is in the garage.
well, that can't be that much of a problem, though, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, all they got to do is push it out into the driveway, and that's fine, of course. You know, mom's not going to care if we push the car out into the garage, right?
Yeah, I mean, she'll probably be glad that they did it themselves and didn't bother her to her to do it.
She does hate to be bothered, although I love when Hobbs says, in the past, you've been a remarkably poor judge of what your mom cares about.
That's
Mom
right.
wouldn't keep caring about these things if she wouldn't keep finding out about them.
Which may or may not be true. Mothers have a way of caring about things even if they're not entirely sure what they are or whether something is going on.
It's a good point, yeah. And we'll maybe see a little bit of that later in this arc.
That's
But
true.
yeah, so mom hates to be bothered, so eventually Hobbs agrees to help Calvin push the car out into the driveway, which of course is slanted downhill as many driveways are, and so the car just keeps going. Ah, it won't stop. Jump in, see if you can pull the emergency brake. Dad's going out into the road. Look out, wild car. Lots of hilarity. Read that arc. It's one of my favorites.
That is a good arc.
Yeah. And so in one of my favorite strips, this comes back to mom maybe caring about things that she doesn't know exactly what the deal is, but we see Calvin's mom in her house in the foreground reading a newspaper and drinking some coffee, I think. And she says something like, I haven't seen Calvin for about 15 minutes now. And then she's sipping her coffee, and we see the car go rolling by in the background. And then we see a panicked Calvin and Hobbs run by in the background. And mom's just, placidly doing her thing. And then she sets down her coffee and says, that probably means he's getting into trouble. So her mom radar is detecting something.
Oh yeah, she was not wrong. I mean, like more trouble than usual, it turns out.
Yes. So now, luckily for Calvin, the car doesn't get hit by any other cars, which kind of makes sense. I don't think they live on a particularly busy street.
No.
So it it just rolls across the street, and luckily doesn't hit anything. It just rolled into the ditch across the road.
Right.
Hooray, we're dead.
Hooray, we're dead. And then we get a classic question and answer. So what is Hobbes? Oh, I guess it is Hobbes that
Well,
says it, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, so they're running across the street, and Calvin's going, "Oh man, oh man, oh man," and then they see the car, and then yeah, go ahead with what Hobbes says.
All right. So he says, "Well, what do you think a car like this costs? I bet at least $75."
Oh man. Now he's not wrong.
Right. It is at least $75 to buy a car like that. And I alluded to this a little bit in a previous episode when we were talking about breaking the binoculars. Like,
Yeah.
they think maybe $4.35 or something might be enough to replace them. And then $100 to $600? Do you have any idea what my dad's going to do to me? And so, yeah, we mentioned in that one, then dad even says at the end of that arc, well, sure, in 10 years or so, you'll probably be wrecking my car. And then it actually takes more like 10 weeks or so when I don't know if it's wrecked, but I think it qualifies for purposes of the comparison.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin even says something like, I didn't think I would be wrecking Dad's car until I was at least 16 or old enough to drive or something like that in this arc. Like,
Yeah.
he
And
specifically
again, we
mentions
have the
that.
idea of like, oh man, this must cost a lot of money to replace, like $75.
Yeah. I mean, that's just an unheard of, absurd amount of money, which that is very true to life, by the way. So I remember distinctly as a kid, my dad one time showing us a $100 bill and me thinking, whoa, my dad finally has $100. Like he must have worked so hard to get $100. That's amazing.
That's true.
And my daughter now, like 100 is like you can't top that. Like with her to top 100, you have to go to Godzilla. Like,
That kind of makes sense. Yeah. It is
I
true
mean,
though
I think
too,
it's
because
true.
like, yeah, I mean, and when you're a kid, most of your references do tend to be in single digits, right? It's like,
Right.
I mean, yeah, your age is going to be a single digit for a lot of your childhood, and then, weeks are 7 days, and that feels like a long time. So, yeah, it is kind of funny how like kids have sort of an idea of money, but
Well, yeah.
relative.
And I mean, if you're getting an allowance, you're probably getting like $5 if you're lucky.
Hmm.
Like you're not getting a huge amount of money when you're a kid because you don't need it. And the things you buy, maybe you're buying gumballs or comic books or whatever, and those are a few bucks. So something being $75 is just like, I mean, I would have to save up for more than a year to even have that much money. So,
Oh yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So,
hard to
yeah.
fathom having that much. And that
Yeah.
you might know cars get paid in installment plans, right? So it's like, well, $75, you have to pay that off. You'd have to have several allowances to do that.
Right. And yeah, if you factor in interest, we could be talking about $100 here at the
Yeah,
end of all of this.
easy.
So, yeah. So the car's in the ditch. Calvin doesn't know what to do about this. The only thing he can think of is time to run away. I'm done here. And so, but first he's got to get some food, right? So he's in the kitchen and he's calling out what he's doing. I'm just gonna make a few dozen peanut butter sandwiches. I'm really hungry. And
Yeah, and I love how like well, first of all, I love how characteristic this is of Calvin. Like when he's really panicked about something, he always makes it worse by trying to act like nothing's wrong. So like it
and doing a terrible job.
oh yeah. Yeah, clearly freaking out, sweating. Um, oh ha ha, nothing's wrong. What do you mean? I'm just hungry. Yeah, it also reminds me when he flooded the bathroom, like tum da dum dum. Oh, I just want some buckets. Nothing wrong. I just want some buckets to do something. And so you see his parents like, just put their hands on their head, like
Let's see how many buckets do we have.
no cause for
Yeah,
alarm. I just want some buckets. Yeah. Yeah, so
yeah,
similar here, although in this one he's even more panicked. So It surprised me that his mom doesn't figure out more quickly that something's wrong. Like he does in the next strip, I think say she was getting suspicious, but I feel like she should have been more suspicious.
Well, yeah, she even comes in and is like, "What's with you?" And he's like, nothing." And she doesn't apparently press any further. So yeah,
Yeah.
but Calvin is like, "I was only able to make a few sandwiches. Mom's getting suspicious. We got to get out of here." So then Mom looks out the window and she's like, "Wow, cars are slowing down as they drive by. I wonder what's going on. Was there an accident? Oh, there's a car in the ravine. It looks like it went in straight backwards. But to do that, it would have had to come right out our driveway." And so then she's running off. And, Calvin and Hobbes are running through the woods. And, okay, I think we can take a break now. We've probably got a pretty good lead. Do you think Mom's discovered the car by now? I don't know, maybe. Okay, we better go again. you know.
Yeah, no, I
So,
think he thinks they must be in some other state by this point. Yeah,
right, yeah.
sort of like it'll probably take us at least until the afternoon to walk to the Yukon. So,
Yeah, which comes back to the $75 thing. I don't really have a good sense of money. I don't have a good sense of distance. Like a
yeah,
mile is forever, that sort of thing. So,
yeah.
yeah.
It is kind of funny. I mean, I think even as adults, we can have a little bit of problems with that, like thinking how
Oh, for
big the
sure.
world actually is, or especially how big the universe is. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing. So we think, oh yeah, the Earth's really small in relation to the sun and the rest of the galaxy, blah blah blah. But when you really start looking at the scale, it's it's kind of disconcerting, really.
Yeah, well, so just as a quick aside, I went through the thought experiment one time. It was something like if the Earth or even maybe the solar system were the size of like a marble, how big would the galaxy be? And so, in my mind, I thought, oh, well, a football stadium was a lot bigger than a marble, maybe, and you could fit a lot of marbles in there, maybe football stadium sized or something. No, no. Turns out if you scaled down the Earth or the solar system or whatever it was, nothing bigger than the solar system to the size of a marble, the galaxy would be about the size of the orbit of Venus,
Oh man.
which is unfathomably huge already. I have no concept really of how big the orbit of Venus is, but that's if you shrink the solar system down to the size of a marble.
That is pretty crazy.
We have no sense of how vast the universe is. It's mind bogglingly large.
Right. Well, what it's like you're saying too, because you think something like, oh man, just imagine how many marbles would fit in a whole football stadium. So you feel like you're doing this, you know, enormous, which you are, but then you're like, oh no, it's actually magnitudes of order larger even than that you're thinking. It's like, okay, I just like, we'll just call it really big and just stop there.
Yeah, that's all we need to know. As Douglas Adams put it, space is big, really big. You just won't believe how mind bogglingly big it is.
That's
So, yeah.
well put.
Yeah. Now, Mom figures this all out and tracks Calvin down, and as she's crashing through the woods after him, what does Calvin think is going on?
They hear something crashing through the woods. He's like, "Oh no, it might be a bear. Let's climb the tree to get away from it."
Yeah, and then they realize it's standing on its hind legs, and so they go, "Oh no, bears only stand on their hind legs when they're really mad." No, I think that's your mom. Even worse, climb higher, climb higher.
Yeah, so mom being there is even worse than it being a bear, which is kind of hilarious, actually.
Yes. But then ultimately, what happens?
Well, his mom just talks to him calmly and says, "Well, are you okay? Yes, the car just rolled in the ditch. Well, there was no damage, and the tow truck's pulling it out, so you can come home now."
First, let's hear you say you love me.
Yes, which smart thinking, Calvin. It's like let's test this just to be sure.
Yeah. But so he comes down, and really all they get is a lecture about asking permission. Although, if you try keeping worms in your dad's something,
Something.
it doesn't go quite that well. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so they're Calvin's kind of pleasantly surprised. It's like, wow, all we got was a lecture about safety and asking permission. We thought we were completely dead here, but wow, what about that?
Yeah. So this is an example, by the way, of what I was talking about, where there's a gross story arc. It starts with gross, but actually a good chunk of it is not gross. It's them running away, and
That's true.
the club is kind of forgotten. So that's part of what I mean when saying it's hard to figure out exactly how to count this sort of thing. But all right, next up, we get a Sunday strip. Now, this is the one that I mentioned before where it's the last verse of the password, and Hobbes lets the rope down, and Calvin says, considering I outrank you, I shouldn't have to do that. And that's the throwaway joke of the strip. So it doesn't mention Gross directly in the throwaway joke, but he does talk about outranking Hobbes. And then the main strip is a Gross meeting where the editorial slant of the minutes from the last meeting and also this meeting are debated as to how accurate they might be, and there was much nonsense and commotion from the dictator for life and such.
Yes,
So
the so-called editorial slant.
right, yes, the so-called editorial slant of the minutes, and I believe this is the one where they the no, I'm actually thinking of a different one. So, but so it devolves into a fight, and then at the end of it, they are climbing down the rope ladder and saying, "Another productive meeting. What a great club!" And I mean, really, the entire meeting was the fight. They didn't even talk about getting rid of slimy girls.
That's
So,
right, which I believe had to do with the so-called editorial slant of the previous meeting, which I think part of it. So yeah, we get much nonsense and commotion from Dictator for Life, and I believe part of the minutes are Dictator for Life receives comeuppance. And
ha!
comeuppance,
I beat you fair and square.
yeah, these minutes are nothing but lies.
And I think maybe that's also the one where uh, Dictator for Life Calvin was censured for biting or something like that.
Yeah,
That might be a different one, but that's in one of them.
yeah, I think it might be a different one, but yeah, you're right. I mean, certainly this happens at least once, and that is true. Like, yeah, he gets a censure or something for biting, which is kind of funny too, because like if you think someone would bite in a fight, you'd think it'd be the tiger, right? Not the
Right.
human. So, which I guess is good that Hobbs wasn't biting, but that's still kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, it's a good strip. And the next one is similar. It's another Sunday strip, and this one involves heresy charges against Hobbes, who has committed the high crime of suggesting that Susie should be allowed to join the club, which, of course, the whole point of the club was to exclude her, and she is an admitted girl.
Admitted, yeah,
I
not
love
even
that.
just an accused girl, an admitted girl.
Yeah, she's not even ashamed of it. So
Wow. I'm
the
appalled for
nerve.
what.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right, so Hobbes is accused of heresy for, yes, for suggesting that Susie Durkins could potentially join the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club.
Yes, and Calvin says to let the record show this, and Hobbes says let the record also show that Dictator for Life Calvin is a nincompoop. And so he's now also accused of insubordination, found guilty of both that and the heresy, and is stripped of his title. But as we mentioned before, he's the court stenographer, so he refuses to enter the verdict into the log, and instead, what does he promote himself to?
I believe it's El Tigre Numero Uno.
That is correct, which apparently is higher than First Tiger because it's fancier sounding. So, yeah.
That's
Now,
true. Well, and in the chant or the verses we talked about before, there is part where it goes three cheers for First Tiger and El Presidente. So he does like to
yes,
throw in sort of the Spanish pronunciations at times.
it's true. Yeah. Now, do you remember what Calvin promotes himself to,
I
or
don't know that he
starts
really
to?
settles on it, but I think it's like, well, then I promote myself to the grandest, most exalted. It like I think he kind of trails
Yeah.
off there.
Yeah, he doesn't finish it, but he uses part of the phrase is most highest,
Okay.
which is great 6-year-old, I think. Most highest, grandest, exalted, and then yeah, he doesn't finish it because this one also devolves into a fight. They eventually call a truce, and then Calvin says, "What a great club! It's too bad we don't have more members." And Hobbes once again says, "Maybe we should let Susie join." So I guess those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
That's right. Yeah, I wonder if there was an immediate second trial for heresy and insubordination.
Yeah, maybe so. Now, there's one other Sunday strip that comes next that's sort of got gross in it. We get one panel that's probably a gross meeting. Again, this one's difficult to count because they're in the treehouse, they're wearing their hats, they have a flag with a skull and crossbones on it, and Calvin is holding up binoculars, but it doesn't actually say gross anywhere. So it may or may not be a gross meeting, but just throwing that out there as another one that comes up.
Yeah, I
But
think so. Right, this could go either way. I mean, it could, in theory, be like, oh, we're pirates, we have the skull and crossbones. But we have seen, I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, at least one case where they have the skull and crossbones, but it also gross is printed on it too.
right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think you could certainly make a case that this would count as an episode of Gross.
Yeah, for sure. But the next kind of big one that's really a gross story is the Binky Betsy story arc, as I call it. And this is a great one. So the meeting starts with Hobbs reviewing the minutes, and I love it's just a little one-off joke, but Secretary Hobbs will now review the minutes. It's 10:32. Thank you. At this time, we'll have a report from Top Scout Calvin.
That is
And I
fun.
believe that's where we get the line. This is you can tell this is a great club because we have so many officers.
I think that's
So
right. Yeah, and it does kind of raise the question, why is it called the minutes? I wonder if it was, I mean, it could be the minutes in the sense, here's what happened at a particular time, or maybe it was originally like minute, like here are the details of what
the details.
happened, or I don't know. That's just kind
You know,
of
my
speculation on my part, but
my wife is heavily involved in PTA and they follow parliamentary procedure and stuff and they keep minutes, so maybe she knows. So
oh, so they do let girls into the PTA then.
yeah, actually, I think there's a lot more girls than boys in the PTA.
Oh,
So
all right. So they,
Calvin would not approve, but
yeah, so they have different bylaws than gross apparently.
yes. But yeah, so Carrie, if you want to chime in on why we call them minutes, let us know, or anyone else for that matter.
That's true. Man,
But
imagine this is silly, but imagine if the PTA was like, oh, no, we don't let mothers into the PTA. I'm sorry, no, you're a
hmm,
girl. You can't join the PTA.
I
That
think
would maybe
PTAs would be
cause
a
some
lot
issues.
smaller.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be smaller too. Yes, for sure.
yeah. So once again, we get our report from Top Scout Calvin, who has sighted the enemy, and Hobbs wants clarification on what that is. And so it's Susie Durkins, this time not an admitted girl, but an acknowledged girl.
Yes.
So,
So we don't know whether she is acknowledging it or they are acknowledging it or both, but either way, it does make her
but yeah,
enemy of the club.
definitely a girl. And she's been sighted two doors down, so Calvin recommends a strike force. And what is the objective of this strike force?
To bug her.
Sounds risky, men. Any volunteers?
And then they both volunteer, so
Yeah. So they make some maps and a code, both of which are ridiculous and not really needed, but except as we may learn later, every secret plan needs a secret code. But uh, so why are they ridiculous? What does Hobbs do with the map?
well, so first he starts with the United States as a whole. So like it's a very comprehensive map. And then when Calvin asks whether he's done with the map yet, he says, not quite. How many bricks does the front walk have? So it's both
Yeah.
comprehensive and extremely detailed.
Yeah, so that must have taken a long time to make. Meanwhile, Calvin makes a code that is very difficult to crack. I don't remember the actual numbers, but it's something like A is 1,637,423, B is 4,500,000 something something and a
And a
half.
half. Yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah.
That kind of
That's a good code, all right.
yeah, it makes me wonder too. So he's like, well, we'll just commit this to memory and it'll be super hard to crack because it's super random numbers. And that's true. And that actually got me thinking like, if we had modern code breakers and technology and things, how long would it take to crack a code like that where it literally was just an assignment of a random high digit number, including fractions?
I don't think it would take very long because there's still the same patterns. I
Yeah,
mean, especially with a computer, the computer doesn't care that the number is 10 digits. So it would just be like, oh, look, this 10-digit number comes up a bunch of times. That's probably E or whatever, whatever the process is, if it's just a cipher. So
I guess that's
I don't think
true.
it's as good
Yeah.
of a code as Calvin thinks it is. It would be hard for a person to break,
Yeah.
probably.
It's good without
But
computer technology, I guess. Although like you said, even if it was just a human doing unassisted, if you realize it's just a cipher, it would kind of be
Yeah.
obnoxious to do that long of numbers. But if you did just recognize the appearance, even that might be doable.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can still catch the patterns.
Yeah.
Um, by the way, I will just say when I was in Cub Scouts, one time I had to make a code and I took inspiration from this
Oh
Calvin and
no.
Hobbes story and made my code like that.
Wow.
And my Weeblo's advisor let me do it, and then it came up in a scout meeting. We printed it up and had everyone decode the message, and everyone was kind of unhappy with my code. So
All right. Now, so what I want to know though is, did you commit the code to memory?
no,
Okay. So that, like, if
I
you'd been
did
able to
not.
do that, then that really would have showed everyone, what do you mean? I memorized it. You, but
Yeah, what's your problem? Yeah. So after going to all this trouble, Calvin and Hobbes, their plan is to soak her with a water balloon. And so Hobbes is like, our map says first we run to the tree out front, and then to the shed out back, and then to this is to throw anyone off our trail. In case you're wondering, and Calvin's like, I'm writing you a message in code. How do you spell nincompoop? So that term comes up a couple of times in Gross stories, interestingly.
yeah,
But
common insult in gross endeavors.
yeah, but by the time they get to Susie's house, she's gone inside. But she made a big mistake. What was her mistake?
She left her toys outside.
That gives me a fabulous idea.
And
And that's one of Calvin's best expressions, in my opinion.
yeah, one of his most evil expressions, Hobbes says, "Uh-oh," and then
Uh, so then Calvin is taking the doll, and of course they'll give it back if she pays the ransom.
right, and that's why it's not stealing too, according to Calvin at least. Hobbes seems less
Right.
sure about this whole thing.
Yeah. So they make her a ransom note with cut and paste letters from like a magazine, and you cannot trace it, you cannot find us. Sincerely, Calvin.
Yeah, and I wonder if this inspired Hobbes later a prank on Calvin where he sends him the secret detractor messages with cut and paste letters.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a good chance of it.
Yeah, but Hobbes is smart enough to not sign it. He just puts a skull and crossbones on it.
Actually, the logo was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they demand from Susie $100 in an envelope by the tree, and they include a picture of Binky Betsy tied to a chair.
Which is kind of funny. And Susie doesn't realize this at first, too. So we get a great reaction shot of her. It's like, oh, wait, there's something else in the envelope. A photo of Pinky Betsy tied to a chair.
Yeah. So they walk by the tree to see if Susie has left the money in the envelope, and I love the line from Hobbes because Calvin says something like, "Lovely day for a stroll, eh, Hobbes? Yes, I certainly enjoy my afternoon constitutional." uh, oh, it worked! Look, there's an envelope by the tree. Did it work?
Well, I mean, she did leave an envelope by the tree as instructed. So she followed that part of it.
But there's not $100 in it. There's a note that says, "Now we're even."
Now we're
Now we're
even.
even.
What does that mean? Hobbs? Hobbs!
Yeah, so Susie runs off with Hobbs, and Calvin chases after her, and she slams the door of her house, and then she's up in her bedroom leaning out the window saying, "Get away from our door with that drill!"
That's right. I also love, too, just to backtrack slightly, while she's running off with Hobbs, first he says, "Oh, put her down," and then Hobbs, bite her.
Hobbs, of course, does not, and we'll see more about that in a second.
No,
But
but I love that in Calvin's mind, of course the Hobbs can bite her. It's like,
yeah,
and that, again, that
yeah. I
comes
mean,
up
what else
later,
would you do?
too.
Yeah. And so then Calvin tries to bargain, I'm sorry, just let Hobbs out and you can have your doll back. Oh no, I think Hobbs likes it better with me. You can keep Binky Betsy.
He does
I don't
not.
want this.
Ew,
Yeah.
this is a girl. Or no, this is a doll.
Oh, but yeah. But she has the cutest accessories you can buy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Susie has a pretty great, like, smiling, taunting expression when she says that, too. It's like, I don't want a doll.
Yeah. Yep. So eventually Calvin ends up paying the ransom of 1/4, and finally he gets Hobbs back, Susie gets Binky Betsy back, and they both think the other is a jerk. And then back in the clubhouse, Hobbs is censured for not mauling Susie when he had the chance.
I think maybe not devouring her even. So like, and Calvin's like,
Yeah,
yeah, he should have bitten her while she was running away with him, but and he also should have devoured her when he was trapped in her room with.
yeah, and so he gets demerits for, getting captured and not devouring her and whatever else. Anything else? I almost told her our code when she rubbed my tummy.
Good gravy, whose side are you on?
Yeah. But is he actually a traitor?
Well, so Calvin thinks he is. He says like, "Oh, it's a dark day for the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club. First Tiger Hobbs, a traitor to the cause." But Hobbs has a reply. He says, "Well, it might interest you to know that while I was in Susie's room, I did some spying.
Oh, and he intercepted a coded message. Wow, deep in enemy territory, you intercepted a enemy communication. What did it say?
I read Susie's diary and it said,
Yeah.
Calvin is a pig-faced, smelly fathead."
Then our club is a success. Promotions all around. Welcome back. Good job, Hobbs.
Yeah, he did in fact intercept enemy communication. So I don't know how useful it is, but he did in fact
I mean,
succeed.
any information, you never know when information will be useful. So, yeah,
That's true. That actually is a good principle. So knowledge is power, as
yeah,
they say.
exactly. And that's that gross story. Next, we have a relatively shorter gross story. So this begins with that club chant that we mentioned. Attention, all rise. This meeting of gross is now called to order by the great grandiose dictator for life and all that. See episode 18 for the whole thing. It also involves the anthem that we mentioned. And Hobbs wants to sing the anthem before it's on the agenda, and he just starts singing it without permission.
Right.
So he gets two demerits for singing the anthem too early.
But then he gives Calvin 5 demerits for not taking his hat off during its hallowed refrain.
Right, except you can't give me demerits, I outrank you. Well, your duties are ceremonial.
Yeah, you're just a
They
figurehead. I have all the real power.
no, I outrank a lowly first tiger any day, and so on. So eventually, Calvin demotes Hobbs to club mascot.
Which and that
I like
cracks
that
me
one.
up. Yeah, like the more I think about that, the funnier I find that line that you're demoted a club mascot. Which
That's a good
also
demotion.
I know. Well, it also yeah, I agree. Like it like not even like, oh, you're just demoted to private first class or something. You're demoted to club mascot. That's yeah, maybe the best demotion I've ever heard of now that I think about it. It also would sort of make sense if it had been called the Hobbs Fan Club. He kind of would have been the club mascot. So
That's true. That's true.
yeah, but it's
Yeah,
not the
but
Hobbs Fan Club. It's the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club.
but Hobbs then says, "Well, you can be Club Chowderhead because I quit."
That's
And then he
right.
forms his own club.
Yeah,
And what does he call it? Calvin says, "Well, your club won't have a cool acronym like mine, but maybe it will."
yeah. My club is CAD.
CAD, what does that stand for?
Calvin's a dope.
That's not a name for a club. And so then Calvin temporarily changes the name of Gross to Hobbs is a mangy flea ridden furball. Oh, an insult! I've been maligned.
My club declares eternal war on your club.
Yeah. So they start fighting, but then Susie shows up. And that changes everything
That does change everything.
because they have a golden opportunity to get rid of a slimy girl. And so Calvin's like, "Oh, Susie's here! Quick, hand me the mushy apples we've been saving." And Hobbs is like, "Oh, I don't know. I thought we were at eternal war." But no, just
It's like, yeah, you're back in. Just
yeah. Maybe I want a promotion. Name it. It's yours. Just hand them over to me. And Susie's like, "Mushy apples. What are you talking about up there?"
which she probably should have been quicker on the uptake there, but I mean, what are you gonna do? It's a
Yeah.
slimy girl, so
Right. And so they throw the mushy apples at her and she's running
like
off and
ah.
yeah, get rid of slimy girls. And so mom comes up and says, "Susie says you were throwing mushy apples at her." Well, we were getting rid of slimy girls. That's our club. And so they get in trouble for it. And we know it's a great club because
They always get in trouble for following their charter.
exactly. So Now we know it's a great club because they have so many officers. We know it's a great club by how they start their meetings, and we know it's a great club because they get in trouble for following their charter.
Right. So
Lots of
there's at
reasons,
least three reasons why it's such a great club.
at least, yes. Next one up is a Sunday strip. This is one of my favorites. This is in the new format where we don't have throwaway jokes and stuff anymore. See episode 8 if you want to know about that. But so they've convened a meeting to make a list of what girls are good for.
Obviously, this will be a short meeting. Yeah.
So, first, girls are good for water balloon targets. Second, they're good for nothing. Third, they're good for colonizing Pluto.
And then Hobbes says, and fourth, they're good for smooching.
And then Calvin doesn't quite catch that at first. He goes, five is, wait, what? What kind of treasonous sissy idea is that? And so this time, Hobbes gets demoted again from first tiger to what?
You know, I'm not sure I remember this time. So I remember him getting demoted again. I don't think it's as good as club mascot, but yeah, I forget. What is the
Yeah,
demotion this time?
it's still pretty good. Oh, and also it has a line that I like. Ooh, ack! I got the dry heaves. You're demoted from first tiger to tiger bulk rate.
Oh, that's right. Not
Yeah,
not
it's not.
first tiger, but bulk rate. That's also a pretty good one.
Yeah, I think I like club mascot better, but tiger bulk rate is pretty good. So,
Yeah, like
and
Tiger
then
Milk Rate is maybe cleverer, but Club Mascot is still a little funnier, I think.
it's a bigger slap in the face.
Yeah.
Uh, but so then Calvin Hobbes says, "You can't suppress the facts. I award myself a medal of valor." And Calvin says, "How would you know it's a fact? Have you been smooching the enemy? Out with it. You have. I saw you, so don't try to deny it. That's a lie." And so
Yeah, it's like these slanderous accusations or something. And
yes. And so they fight, but then Hobbes is able to prove that Calvin has in fact been smooching a girl.
that's
Specifically
true.
who?
Right. Surprisingly, yeah, so Calvin is sure that these are slanderous accusations, but Hobbes says, I saw you. You kissed your mom good night last night. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah. And Calvin pauses for a second and he's like, I guess mom is kind of a girl, sort of,
Sort of.
which I
Yeah. I mean,
love.
moms are kind of girls. Like,
I mean, yeah, if you divide everyone into boys and girls, I guess they're
yeah,
girls.
moms
So,
end up in that category. That's true. So
yeah,
says, all right, presidential pardons all around.
yeah. And they add an amendment to the club laws that say smooching is optional if it's your mom.
Yeah, and I find it kind of funny that they say optional instead of like permitted or a non-punishable offense or something like that, because that almost makes it sound like,
Yeah,
well, if you want to smooch your mom, you can. Like it's optional, but
yeah. So that's one of my favorite strips, period, and such a good gross strip.
it really is. And surprisingly that the dictator for life did in fact end up being guilty of the accusations. I mean, maybe we'll call it a technicality, but it turned out it wasn't slander. He really did it.
Yep, it's true. So yeah, had to add an amendment. But great strip. The next instance is another story arc. Now, I will throw in here there is one mention, and I'm not sure where it falls in the chronology of the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club that I just want to bring up quickly.
Sure.
In the second duplicator story, when he duplicates only his good side and then finds out that his good side has been writing mash notes to Susie, he says, I'm supreme dictator for life of the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club. My reputation, my honor. So
Oh
we
yeah.
just get a quick shout out there.
Exactly, which
But
I actually love that too, and we'll talk about this again maybe in a future episode. But yeah, I love how he mentions his principles, his reputation, and his honor. So it's not just like, oh, haha, we're getting rid of girls. Like, no, this is a moral principle that he adheres to. It's like, I, I
I
will
will not abide this.
no, like I stand for something. I can't be accused of that. So, kind of like the sissy treasonous idea that he was smooching an admitted girl. So, yeah, so I really get a kick out of that too. It's not just, oh no, it's just no, this is a principle. This is what I stand for.
Well, and I like that you bring that up, that Susie is an admitted, acknowledged girl, whereas mom is kind of a girl, sort of.
That's right. Yeah, I guess
um,
Rosalind then is sort of I mean, maybe borderline case is overstating it, but she still qualifies as babysitter girl, I guess, because she's not technically an adult, even though she's certainly like kind of adult like in the sense of being an authority figure over Calvin.
Right, but she's not babysitter woman or babysitter lady. She's
Right.
babysitter girl. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is
Now,
interesting that yeah, so
yeah,
there are clear instances of admitted or acknowledged girls, and then there's the well, kind of a girl sort of cases.
yeah. Now, the next real gross story, though, is another arc. So this one starts with them reviewing the minutes of the previous meeting, this time actually going through the minutes. And so what happened was in the previous meeting, Hobbes abstained from a vote on a resolution that would condemn the existence of girls. And so because of that, the motion failed. And because of that, a philosophical discussion ensued.
Yeah, and then I think also before that, the patriotism of the first tiger is called into question.
That's right, yes. And so then they have the philosophical discussion, at which, if you look at the minutes, lasts like 45 minutes or something. And then at the end of it, bandages administered.
Yes,
And oh, this is where Dictator for Life is rebuked for biting.
that's right. Which doesn't mean he wasn't biting in the other case too, but yeah, this is when it's specifically mentioned.
Yeah. And then at the end of the minutes, forgot what argument was about, medals of bravery awarded to all parties.
Yes, which is interesting because they forgot what the argument was about, but then they must have remembered later, or else they wouldn't have the minutes.
Yeah, I guess maybe Hobbes kind of searched his memory and then
Yeah,
realized or
backtracked.
something. Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I do like that. And again, as a philosopher, I guess I can probably count on one hand the times that philosophical discussions ended with bandages being administered. So yeah, so that stands out as pretty funny.
Yeah. Now, at the end of this, in the next strip, Calvin is now giving a rousing speech about how they have tolerated the enemy for too long. And Hobbes is keeping the minutes, and, huzzas and pandemonium ensues. And,
That's right.
you know,
People moved
so,
to tears, like cheers for the club ideals,
yes, exactly.
which I believe this is also even a fourth reason how you can tell it's such a great club is because of how passionate all the members are.
Yeah, leading a club is a very heady experience. So now we get another report from Field Scout Calvin, who reports that Susie is engaged in enemy activity. Which, what is he referring to?
Girl stuff.
Say no more.
Say no more. Yes.
So,
That kind of reminds me of when looking in the newspaper, I think, and Calvin says something like, "Oh, this says this movie has adult situations. What do you think that means?" And Hop says, "Well, it must be things like taking responsibilities, going to work, paying your taxes." So yeah. So in the same vein, girl stuff. It's whatever
yeah,
girls do, I suppose.
whatever girls do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
girl stuff. Yeah, whatever that is.
right. So, the plan that Calvin comes up with, it's a bold plan, and it's to lure Susie into the backyard using a fake coded message so that they can soak her with a water balloon. Now, Hobbes thinks maybe it would be easier to just get a water balloon and go throw it at her because she's already on the sidewalk. But Calvin is just not into that. It's really kind of sad how little imagination Hobbes has.
That's
And
true. I mean, that would sort of make sense, but it's obviously an inferior idea to having a complicated plan involving a code that someone breaks intentionally and then you lure them somewhere. I mean, come on, Hobbes.
yeah, these are tactics, man.
Yeah,
So of course the code can't be too difficult to crack. Susie, being a girl and all, probably can't figure out codes, right?
right.
So uh, yeah, so what they come up with is they write it backwards. That way it'll be easy to figure out. And so they walk by where Susie's playing and have this conversation. Oh boy, it would sure be bad if this fell into a girl's hands, and Susie's completely ignoring them. And then eventually notices it, picks it up, and takes it over to Calvin. Oh hey, did you drop this? Calvin's very upset that Susie didn't didn't fall for this.
Yeah, he's like gritting his teeth. Yes, thank you.
So they walk by Susie one more time and really lay it on thick. Boy, it would be bad if Susie read this. And he like basically turns to her. Yeah, if Susie read this code, and And
I sure hope Susie doesn't read what's in this envelope.
that would sure ruin our plans. Boy, would that be bad. And so,
So yeah,
of
not
course, Susie,
exactly Brer Rabbit, but he's trying.
yeah. So Susie, of course, catches on and says, "Oh, this must be the message Calvin wants me to read. It's not much of a code. I can just read it through the back."
Which
And
little does she know
uh,
that was the point, but okay.
right. And so it says something like, "Hobbs, if Susie comes behind our house before noon, all our plans will be ruined." And so she's like, "Boy, I better get back behind Calvin's house." And Calvin's like, "Oh, she fell for it. Let's go. Come on, Hobbs."
I think before that he even says like, "Well, I'm glad she finally read it. I was afraid we'd have to hit her over the head and recite it to her."
Yes. So they get into position, and Susie doesn't show up. What's going on? So Calvin says, "I'm gonna go on a reconnaissance mission," and Hobbs says, "Why can't I go on the reconnaissance mission? What is the reason?"
I think it's because he allows himself to get captured and would probably tell Susie everything if that happened.
Yeah, I believe the line is, "Because you'd tell Susie anything for a tummy rub." I might not.
That's true. Well, that's kind of like oh my willpower to not throw the snowball at Susie is being tempted. It's like poor Susie. It's not a foregone conclusion, so
Yes.
yeah, so they're kind of mirror images when it comes to Susie in this way.
Yeah, they're both tempted by Susie just in different ways.
Yes, and
So,
neither of them can resist the
yeah,
temptation.
exactly. So Calvin sneaks around, and Susie is waiting there with the garden hose. Five, four, three, and then Calvin gets soaked. And this is one that it's off screen. We see Hobbs, and Calvin is going, "Wait, how did you get the hose?" And he's getting soaked, and then he comes back to Hobbs, and he's like, "I promise you'll hang for this." So, no, I'm getting my wires crossed,
Yeah,
aren't
I
I?
think that might be a different one where Hobbs was a double agent.
Yeah.
I think in this one is he
No,
just says like, "Oh, this doesn't go in the club log. Remember, this never happened."
that's it. Yeah, I was thinking of the water fight. It's the water
That's
fight where he
right.
says, "You'll hang for this." But yeah, because Hobbs isn't a traitor this time. He is just standing there
This
while
time,
Calvin went on the reconnaissance mission. Yeah. He probably would have been a traitor if he'd gone on the reconnaissance mission, but he didn't.
especially if he'd
So,
gotten a tummy rub.
yeah. But ultimately, even though it was a dark day in gross history, they are all awarded bottle caps of valor for courage in the face of adversity.
That's good.
So, a happy ending. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final gross story. This is the one where Susie comes over to Calvin's house after school. This is the other case where the entire story isn't gross, but in this case it becomes a gross story.
Yes.
So at first, Susie is following Calvin home and he's like, "This is the path to my house. Your house is over there." And she's like, "I know."
Want me
And
to
then
draw you
Calvin
a
is,
map of how to get there?
yeah, and she goes, "Well, it's obvious that I'm not going to my house." "Well, it's a lot more obvious that you're not coming to mine."
Yeah, so then he's running away, trying to get away from Susie.
Yeah. And he tells her she can wait in a tree, and then Susie's like, "I'm telling, hello, is anyone
Yeah,
home? Calvin won't let me in."
that's right. It's
Ah,
like, oh yeah, it's
shh.
my mom's rule that you can sit in our yard, but that you can't come in the house. Your mom didn't say that.
Yeah. But once Susie starts to narc, then Calvin's like, "Oh, no, don't tell me. Actually, I've got a great idea. In fact, why don't you open the door and go in first?"
Yeah, there's a stripy orange surprise waiting for you.
Yes. And so then he's like, "Oh, this is going to be great." And Susie's like, "Is this your orange surprise? Doggone it, Hobbs, why didn't you pounce?" And then Calvin comes up and sees Hobbs wearing a tie.
Like,
"What's the deal with the tie?"
you dressed up for a girl?
Yeah. So obviously, this is not acceptable. And Hobbs is defending this action. When one entertains female friends, one should try not to look as seedy as certain parties habitually do.
So what parties? Who looks seedy? Who's
Who's
entertaining
entertaining?
female friends? Yeah, female friends. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So, okay, Susie gets in the house, but she is very confusing because Calvin finds her studying immediately after school, doing her homework.
Wait, she's not putting it off till the end of the day?
Yeah, and not only that, but she reviewed the previous chapter so that she could understand the next one.
Huh.
I mean,
I thought she was
I used to
smart.
think she was smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which,
So,
as a side note, it is kind of funny too how people, like sometimes people tend to think of, oh, smart people, it's like, oh, they just understand things, they don't have to try or whatever. But it's like, well, no, it's because they do try that they understand things. Not to say that there aren't like,
yeah.
natural smarts and stuff too, but I mean, I don't know. This is maybe just a digression, but yeah, it is kind of funny how people think it's just a binary sometimes.
Yeah, well, I've told this story before that one time my dad mentioned to someone who's really good at the trumpet, I wish I were as good as at the trumpet as you are. And the guy said, well, no, if you wished that, you would practice 8 hours a day like I do. It's maybe he's talented at the trumpet, but he's also good at it because he works to be good at it. And
Exactly.
that's true with anything.
Yeah.
So,
But it is very mind-blowing for Calvin though. It's like, oh, I used to think she was smart, but little did I know she just reads what she's assigned, and that's why she's able to understand the material.
yeah, I am going to assume it's okay to also bring this one up. So, my brother is very smart, and he's a doctor now. He didn't always apply himself when he was in public school. And later, so, he kind of dropped out of college for a while, but then went back, obviously, and, so now he's a doctor. When he went back, he said that he didn't have a lot of patience for some of the other students who were younger who weren't studying very hard. And he said, it's not very hard if you study. And my dad was like, yes. you know, so,
Huh. Did
uh,
anyone ever tell you that? If only they had.
yeah. But anyway, you're right. So this behavior is completely baffling to Calvin, and he even characterizes it as disinformation to the effect that homework got to be done right after school.
I mean, that is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Now this is where the story has actually become gross because they have convened an emergency meeting with you in the dark with a flashlight, and he says that Susie has been spreading this disinformation, and that since mom probably has covert girl sympathies, being kind of a girl sort of, they must take matters into their own hands.
Yes. Yeah, and I
So
love the idea that they would be covert girl sympathies. It's like, well, she's not just going to come
yes,
out and say this, but she might secretly be sympathetic to these ideas, which
right,
is also
exactly.
hilarious because it's pretty clear this is exactly how they wish Calvin would act.
Yeah. So and they're having this meeting not in the treehouse because it's an emergency meeting. We've mentioned this before, but where are they meeting?
It is underneath a box, which I guess at this point is the emergency meeting box. So it's not the transmogrifier or the duplicator or the time machine right now. Presumably it is the same box
Yes.
though, but yeah, now it's functioning as a secret, secure meeting place.
And it is called the Box of Secrecy, which must remain secure, therefore they cannot poke air holes in it.
That would
So,
probably also damage its other capabilities too. So I can
right.
see the value in this, even though I can also understand Hobbs wanting to poke some air holes. Yeah. No, too risky. It must remain secure.
So yes. So they come up with a plan. We're not told yet what the plan is, but they both understand the secret plan. And Hobbs says, "Well, we need a secret code." And Calvin says, "No, this secret plan doesn't need a secret code." And so Hobbs pulls out the rule book, and
Which is an actual book, it
and
turns out.
yes, and so Calvin reads, "Every secret plan needs a secret code," and then there are some tips. One, everyone already knows Pig Latin. Two, the more confusing or something, the better, something
Right.
like that. And then three, phrases like code blue are cool.
Which,
And
agreed, those do sound pretty cool.
yes. And so Calvin admits our club charter never lies. So they probably come up with a code. I guess they don't use it, but I guess they have one. So their plan is they record Calvin saying some things and put the tape recorder in the closet and push play. And so it's saying things like, Susie, help, I can't get out of here. Susie, can you hear me? Help. And so Susie comes over and opens the door and finds the tape recorder, and she has this look on her face, but now the trap is sprung.
Yes, it's
And
too
so,
late. They slam the door shut
yeah,
behind her, trapping her in the closet.
right. And so then, of course, Susie immediately starts saying, Calvin, let me out of here, you rotten bag of barf, and all these things. And eventually, mom comes by and, hello, hello, Calvin won't let me out. And so Calvin has to move aside and open the closet. Why, Susie, what were you doing in the closet of all places? He tricked me in there,
Yeah, which is
Calvin.
great because I mean, yeah, that's probably not gonna work as far as feigning surprise, but it also kind of reminds me in a weird way of an earlier strip where Hobbs was gonna take the bath for Calvin in disguise, and so then, his mom comes in, "Dear, why are you taking a bath and wearing your best hat too?"
Yeah, I was always confused about how that disguise worked, but sure.
I mean, who else
uh,
would be wearing that hat in the bathtub besides Calvin's
right.
dad? So,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so Susie gets out. She gets to go home, finally. And Calvin says, "Bye, Susie. Try not to get locked in any more closets." And your mom goes, "I'll see you upstairs later." And so Calvin decides that they got rid of a slimy girl. Awards are in order, and Hobbs asks, "Should we get them before we get in trouble or after?"
which is a great
And
question.
yeah, and that's really the last that we hear of Gross. So now there are the other references, like when Calvin duplicates his good side, there's the one off reference, and there are the things that could kind of be implied gross activity. I mean, anytime they're bugging Susie, it would at least be approved by Gross, if
That's
not
true.
official Gross business. So, there's that. But then, there's the early comic you mentioned where Calvin excludes her from the tree house, and she's not put off by that. She is a girl and therefore ruins sex discrimination, of
Yeah.
course.
How rude.
Yeah. But, anytime they throw snowballs, you mentioned the hate mail arc where Hobbs is creating the anonymous hate mail letters for Calvin. At the end, Calvin realizes it's funny if they do that to Susie and they send
Right.
her a letter that says, "Susie, you smell, ha ha."
I always wondered too if that was in code or if they just wrote the message out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But they did put the skull. So,
That's
you
true.
know. And then there's the namesake strip for the days are just packed, where they wait for Susie to walk under the tree, and if she doesn't, then they just sit in the tree all day. But that sounds like a pretty good gross plan. So, you know, all of these things could be gross; they just aren't expressly identified as such, which I think also maybe makes it feel like there's even more gross strips than there actually are.
Right. Because we have the gross vibe pretty much throughout the strip, whether or not Gross the Club has officially been formed yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, that's all the gross strips, and I love them not because I think Calvin is right about girls, because obviously
You
he's
did
not,
marry one.
but I did,
I mean,
yes,
and if you thought
guilty. So,
smooching was a treasonous sissy idea, like getting married to a girl, yeah,
getting
that's a
married.
you'd be excommunicated for sure from that club.
Yeah. So, but I do think the strips are funny, and, as we've noted before, clearly Calvin is not in the right here, and he always gets his comeuppance. So,
Right.
but the lines they give, the art, the way things are drawn, just so much of it is so funny and also kind of real. I mean, I feel like it embodies the girls have cooties thing that happens a lot in childhood. Of
Hmm.
course, with Calvin always getting his just desserts.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, I find it very funny all of the fights that this causes between Calvin and Hobbes. And one thing I don't think we mentioned before, but during one of the fights that we mentioned, I think Hobbes takes the club rule book and he says, "Ha, I wrote Hobbes equals great in the club book. That makes it a law." It's like,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
and then Calvin writes like Hobbes is a mangy, I don't know, whatever, one of the insults that Calvin uses for Hobbes right there in the club book. So, yeah.
exactly. So yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this provides so much fodder for so many funny things with the interactions between Calvin and Hobbes or them and Susie. So yeah, it's just a really fun part of the strip.
Yeah, I love it. I would never join such a club, but boy, is it fun.
No. It does make me think too, like I mentioned, obviously you married one, and I said before about Calvin thinks when he gets older, he's still going to be in Gross. It's just he won't sing the soprano part of the anthem anymore. And then I was just kind of thinking today, maybe if Calvin did get married someday, like would someone's talk about in a speech like how, when he was a kid, he had a whole club devoted to getting rid of girls, but how things have changed now.
My, how the turntables.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a fun
So,
idea anyway. I guess if they had taken Hobbs' suggestion during a time travel strip and gone into the future, they might have been able to know for sure whether they were
yeah.
still in the Get Rid of Slimy Girls Club.
Now, I believe that was actually Calvin's suggestion, and Hobbes didn't want to,
That's right.
which Calvin might have regretted that if they'd gone into the future and he was, had a girlfriend or something.
That's
Like,
true. It's like,
oh,
what
the,
happened?
the future is wild. Yeah.
It's like that's kind of like in science fiction or fantasy stories. Sometimes it's like you find out about the dystopian future, and now you have to figure out how to prevent it from coming to pass and stuff. So
Yeah. One often encounters his fate on the path he takes to avoid it.
that's right. But
Uh,
but you still have to try, I think. Like I've never been a fan of the whole like, well, there's nothing we can do. That's what the future is. I guess we won't even try to change it. It's like, come on, man, have some.
yeah.
You gotta at least
Yeah.
try to rail against fate.
Well, yeah, and we even learned if you hadn't screwed up my past, your future wouldn't be like this. So,
That's right. Yeah, and if you hit me, it'll be my future self that hurts, haha. But then it's like, well, actually, we'll all be that eventually. So,
right. Yep. All right. So, this has been a long episode, but it's been a fun one. I've really enjoyed it. Listeners, tell us what you think about Gross. Do you like it? Do you think Calvin's a horrible sexist pig? All of the above. What are your favorite Gross strips? Just anything else you want to tell us. And also, of course, if you would like to send us trivia questions, please send us your trivia questions.
exactly. And as always, this is a free podcast and an ad-free podcast. So, we just love for any other fans, old fans, or maybe even new ones who were more recently introduced even by this podcast. Who knows? So, whichever category you fall into, we're glad to have you come along with us.
Yes, come along. Don't get rid of slimy girls, but let's go exploring. You've been listening to The Magic of Calvin and Hobbes, a fan celebration. We'll be releasing 40 episodes all throughout the year, from November 18th, 2025 to November 18th, 2026, to celebrate the 40th anniversary. Our intro and outro music is Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, referenced in the Calvin and Hobbes strip published on October 8, 1986. This rendition was performed by the Skidmore College Orchestra and made available under a Creative Commons license on museopen.com. We hope you'll join us next episode for more fun.